So our mindset for today is that we are going to be collaborative. We're going to be experimental. I'm going to try something new on you after lunch, and so I'm always out there trying something new and experimenting. We're human-centered. We're thinking about all the people in the room and all the people that we work with, and then we're also optimistic. On the other side of that, I put some hashtags that might work for you later at school this year. Fail forward, embrace ambiguity. That's one of our guiding principles in my innovation center, because a lot of times you're trying to dig into a problem. It's really ambiguous how to start sometimes. And then I learned this from my instructor a couple weeks ago, sufficiently unclear. So you might want to use that with your students. He kept saying, is it sufficiently unclear? And everybody was like, yes, we kind of know what we're supposed to do. So if you're feeling that way today, that's okay. I always tell people the first part of the day is a little bit rough because you're really digging into some problems, but in the afternoon we're ideating, we're prototyping, and you feel very amazed at where you've gone during the day. So we're going to get up and do one improv activity. It's maybe not so improv, but if everybody would come over here and just kind of stand in the middle. I'm going to give you some directions. Get everybody moving around a little bit. This also ties in now that we've done some social networking and we know what people are interested in. This is an activity that is about a bias towards action. Making a decision. You can't be in the middle on this. So what's going to happen is no, just stand here for now. So what's going to happen is I'm going to read you two different words, like coffee or tea. And I'm going to say, coffee, go to this side, tea, go to this side. Now, there's somebody in here who doesn't like coffee or tea. Who's that? I'm sorry. You're going to have to choose a side. Okay. This is a situation sometimes we get in. There's no good option, but we just have to go with like our gut. So it's about making choices. So we'll do that one first. Coffee or tea? Coffee or tea, right. And remember, you got to separate, you can't be in the middle. There's no continuum here. There is another activity called creative tensions, which you might also want to use with your students if you have older students, which is great because you can get people to be on the continuum. You could do this around a lot of issues like empathy or diversity, and it would be a very powerful exercise for that. And that you can look that up online, creative tensions. So, all right, Android or iOS. This is also always helpful for me to know what kind of devices are in the room. Okay. All right. Late nights, early mornings. If I were at Wood, I would go to early mornings. I'm all right. How's this working? We got a lot of good morning people. Watch these guys, okay? Watch them. Yeah, they're a little bit sleepy. Spicy or sweet? Okay, same thing. This afternoon we're going to need maybe some sweet stuff going on here. Okay, grilled or fried? Sorry. And I tell you what, we'll go ahead and throw in my North Carolina barbecue thing, which I think, I don't even know what that is, but is it like vinegar or tomato? Yeah, barbecue. We do mustard. We do mustard where I come from. A lot of tomato, folks. I didn't give you enough options, obviously. Okay, spontaneous or planned? Oh, okay. So, all right. So now I know my challenge for today, just why I gave you an agenda. So it's all on you, Ebony. Okay, lover or fighter? Truthfully. Getting a little serious here. All right. Let it stew or hash it out? Oh, okay, so also a lot of hashing it out today, especially when we don't know what's happening. Okay, let's see, a couple more. Inside or outside on a good day? I added that on a good day part. All right, so we have nice windows to look out. Numbers or words? Yeah. All right, words as we hash it out. All right, we got it. And let's close out with a couple more. Think to talk or talk to think? Like think before you talk, or I'm just going to talk as I think. All right. All right. So looking good. A lot of thinkers in the room. So I just wanted us to do that to get a little more information about how today is going to go for everybody. But do think about how you could take this back and use it with your students. So thank you. And we'll, well, you know, you can call it creative tensions. I think, but for this particular activity, you have to choose sides. But you could use this activity and have people line up along a continuum. And then you could also have discussions about like why are you there? But so that's how you could maybe take it to the next level. All right. Well, thank you all for engaging in that with me. Always like people to get up and move around a little bit. And we're going to dig right into a couple activities in a minute. So I think we've got folks spread out around the tables. We're probably going to move tables a little bit in a few minutes, so we'll deal with that when the time comes, or you might just decide to collaborate at your table on one project. So that's our mindset for today. I did include in your agenda and in this presentation a lot of those resources, a lot of my favorite books, a lot of resources that I have, and you're welcome to come over at lunch. I like to take the mystery out of design thinking because people think that design thinking is you know, some complicated thing, and it really is a thought process. But I like to take the mystery out and say, like, there's all this free stuff. My friend Ewan McIntosh has a book, and all his resources are free. The Luma Institute is one of my favorite institutes with great resources. They also have a card deck, Innovating for People, and we'll be using a few activities from Luma Institute. Field Guide to Human-Centered Design from the D School is a free download, and it has lots of great activities. So some of the things we do today are in this book. There's another one, Design Thinking for Educators. That was a collaboration with D School and IDEO and some educators. And then I didn't bring the book, but there's a book called Thinker Toys, and then there's a Think Pack with kind of thinking activities. And I just got this one. I'm like I love these card decks. Mock-ups, which is a little prototyping game you can use with students. And then I'll leave this out at lunch if anybody wants to play Disrupt Us, which is also a great game to think about how you can go from just making improvements to something to doing really different transformative things, and it could be used with students as well. And there's probably some of the activities that we're going to do, like the improv things, came out of the Stoke deck, and I have a link to that. You can download that and print out the Stoke deck cards. So we'll be doing some activities that came out of there. So I just like to demystify it and make sure you know where all the resources are. Any questions at this point? And just for my information, how many of you are at high schools? All right, middle and elementary. Okay, that just helps me to know. When we choose projects to work on today, you may want to consider that and maybe not. You might also want to consider just working with somebody that you know, you have the same interest in the topic. It doesn't have to be the same level. So those are resources. The other tools that we use are these artifacts. We're going to have a lot of Post-its today. At some point I'll put out the dots so that we can vote. We always vote, do some affinity voting with those dots. I carry around an idea list. Whenever I get ideas, I write it down, and you could also call it a ideas wallet. a bug list, anything that bugs you, it's okay. It's okay in this process to start uncovering what are some problems that we see. And you can do that in your classroom. You can observe, like, what bugs me today? What is going on? Because until we know what really bugs us, we can't go about solving that problem. So just writing down ideas and things that bug you are okay. So I always carry a little book around in my bag that has all of that on it. And taking photos is important. Also, in terms of design thinking and going back to your school, it's great to have a safe space, a safe physical space. This is a great space we're in here. Many schools have think tank spaces, but if you don't, this is a good conversation to have with your administrators. How can we have a safe space where teachers can come and collaborate and work and leave their thinking on the walls and let people see what people are working on? And then also virtual space like Slack, or a place where you can go and share with other people. So just in terms of that tool set, space is really important. And I've got a short video I'm going to share about the human-centered design process. And then after that, we're going to launch into choosing some topics to work on today.
Human-centered design is a creative approach to problem solving, one that starts with people and ends with innovative solutions tailored to meet their needs. When you understand the people you're trying to reach and then design from their perspective, not only will you arrive at unexpected answers, but you'll come up with ideas that they'll embrace. Human-centered design is both how you think and what you do with it. It's a process that consists of 3 phases: inspiration, ideation, and implementation. The inspiration phase is about learning on the fly, opening yourself up to creative possibilities, and trusting that as long as you remain grounded in the desires of the people you're designing for, your ideas will evolve into the right solution. In the ideation phase, you come up with lots of ideas. Some too crazy to work, some too crazy not to try, and you'll refine them, tossing out the bad and improving the good. Making things helps you learn, grow, and test your ideas. Building a simple prototype gets your idea tangible and gives you something to put right back into the hands of the folks you're designing for. Without their input, you won't know if your solution is on target or how to evolve your idea. Keep iterating, testing, and integrating feedback until you've got everything just right. During the implementation phase, you'll build partnerships, shore up your business model, and get your idea out into the world, which was always the goal in the first place. Anyone can practice human-centered design, and everyone benefits because it gets us all to solutions that are adopted and embraced.
It's just a short video that comes out of the D School that could help you with sharing this with other people. I always like to show a little short video. And I love the Albert Einstein quote, "We cannot solve our own problems using the same thinking that when we used when we created them." So lots of great quotes out of there. So it's about solving. Today you're going to come up with some big, hairy, audacious goals. Another little favorite video of mine, just about how we can take something that looks pretty sorry and turn it into a great, beautiful thing.
Ideas are scary. They come into this world ugly and messy. Ideas are frightening because they threaten what is known. They are the natural-born enemy of the way things are. Yes, ideas are scary and messy and fragile. But under the proper care, they become something beautiful.
just another short video, but inspiration, because we can take these ideas, and I know, how many of you have like ideas popping into your head like constantly? Yeah, so you can take those ideas and you can make them come to life using this process. So it really works when you use a design thinking process. And so these are the phases. There are a lot of different models out there. I am sort of fond of this human-centered design process out of the D School. Because of the stages, I love the fact that we start with empathy and empathize with people, and that is so important, that we have empathy for others and really understand where we're coming from, what our perspective is, and what the perspective of other people might be. So we learn about the people we're designing for. We can't come up with solutions unless we know who we're solving for, right? Sometimes we call them stakeholders, which is, I think, a too jargony word maybe. In my district, we call them partners. We're all partners in my district. Community partners, everyone is a partner. So just however you think about all the people you work with, that you would empathize with them. And so there are some activities for that. Then the second phase is really defining the problem. This is deep research, really going out into the world and observing and interviewing people and getting some really good information also just from going online, researching a lot of different ways that you can really dive into the problem and learn more about it. So we're going to walk through observing and interviewing today. And then the fun part, for me at least, is brainstorming lots of ideas, because I love coming up with ideas, but then we also decide which ones are the ones we want to start working on and putting into action through prototypes, where we initially just build it from maybe craft materials or with an online mock-up, but then eventually we get feedback on that and we take it out into the real world and we test it out. So that's the process that we'll go through today. We're going to finish up the day talking about the testing piece and how you can go back in your schools and test this out in some small pilots at your school. And that's also, information is in the deck, so I know y'all are all writing, and I remember y'all like to take notes, so but we'll be going through each of these phases today. And if you break it down, it's really an inspiration phase, then an ideation, and then an implementation phase. There's a lot of what we call diverging. We will be just all over the place, learning all kinds of things, and then we're going to have to synthesize that and converge so that we can go into that ideation phase, where once again we're going to come up with lots of ideas, and then we have to decide which ones are the most desirable, feasible, and viable to put into place. And so we'll converge again. So you see that, eventually you're honing it down to some things that you can start working on. I call it, other people call it storming and norming. So we'll be doing a lot of storming today, and then a lot of norming around. These are the things that we want to work on first. So that's what it looks like in action. And this is what it feels like. Remember I said embrace ambiguity, sufficiently unclear. You're going to be like, I do not know what's going on here. We started with one problem and now we're working on something different. But it does eventually come around to where it makes sense. So that first phase for inspiration is really empathizing and defining the problem, which we're going to jump into right now. This is an activity at your table. We're not going to take much time. You've got Post-it notes on your paper, but what I want you to do is to brainstorm for yourself at least 7 lenses of how you see the world. Okay, so I might say I see the world, like a lot of times I see the world through weather. Like that is what I care about more than anything, is sunshine. But I might dig a little deeper and I might say, I see a lot of things from a woman's perspective. I really am kind of passionate about a lot of issues as a woman. So I want you, it could be ethnicity, it could be family. So think about the lenses that are most important to you, that you use to see the world. And then what I'd like you to do is just we'll take about just a couple minutes to jot those down, and then I'd like you to share with somebody next to you some of the things that you jotted down. Okay, so I wanted to give you this activity because that's what empathy is about. Is we have to start with us. We have to start with looking at ourselves first, or it's going to be pretty hard to empathize with others. And there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. I mean, if you've never had an experience that I've had, it may be easier to have some sympathy for me as opposed to you haven't walked in my shoes, you don't have any like similar experience to tie into. So part of the empathy piece that we do in design thinking is really going out to talk with people and observe them, and then getting a sense of what they're thinking and feeling, and that helps us to be able to be more empathetic, and because then we can say, I did have this experience that maybe kind of relates to what you're going through. But just having open hearts and open minds in terms of that, and that's why we call it human-centered design, is we do start with thinking about ourselves and thinking about others, because we all bring those biases and assumptions to the table. The second part, after we begin with empathy, is we really do have to start thinking differently about problems, because a lot of times, and I have been in education for a very long time, a lot of times we see problems and we say, well, I can't do anything about it. It's not in my power, it's not in my circle of influence, and I think that's a reason a lot of us kind of get burned out sometimes, because we want to solve the problem, but we're not sure that we are able to influence that. But when you find a wicked problem, and which is a problem that is really complex, there's always something that you can start doing to tackle that problem, and then you can scale and you can work to get a bigger audience for your solution. But if you want better solutions, you've got to find the right problem. And so a problem that I hear, let me see if y'all can resonate with this, every single time I get an innovation team together, is we don't have time to plan. Has anybody ever heard that? Is that like a daily mantra in education? We do not have time to plan. Or the other second one I hear most of the time is, we do not have the resources. Anybody ever say that? We don't have any money, we don't have any resources. Or here's the biggie, we don't have support from our administrators to do that. Anybody ever have that? Okay. So those are problems that I think come out very frequently, and a lot of times we're like, I don't even know where to start. How would I start with having time to collaborate with my peers? And you begin to think, well, I need support. So then you're thinking, well, do I need to work with the administrators first, or do I need to work with teachers first, or so you're really trying to decide where you start, and that's a wicked problem. So you have to start somewhere, and we have this bias towards action that we decide what the best direction is, and we're going to do some things to work on one specific aspect of that problem, but we're going to have to dig down. And so what we're going to do now is pick how might we statements, and then I'm going to let you form teams based on a how might we statement that you want to tackle today. I always give samples and examples. You're going to go back to your school and you're going to find a team at your school possibly, or you may, this is another cool thing that could happen, is at the end of the day you may want to work as a team through the Teaching Fellows Institute to tackle something on a bigger scale. So there may be something that you could do through the Teaching Fellows Institute, but it's also something you may want to go back to your school and gather a team of teachers, or you may just want to try this in your classroom with your students. So you're going to pick your own how might we when you get out of here today. But I like to have samples that we can use during the training, because when you pick something that's very real to you, it takes a lot of time to solve it. My innovation teams spend months digging in, going out and interviewing and observing and reading in order for them to sort of tackle the problem that they have. So it's going to require a lot of research and work when you go back to your school. So today we use sort of samples, which are some good how might we statements. But a good how might we is how we start with our problem solving. We have to really understand what the problem is and write it well so that we're open to a lot of solutions. If I came in here and I said, how might we develop an app so that students will become healthy eaters? I have locked myself down with that how might we statement, because I've already said we're going to develop an app, right? So that's just too specific. So you want your topic to be generative so that it can create a lot of different solutions. So how might we inspire high school students to be healthy eaters for life? You know, maybe I want to specify, I want to do something now that will help them to be healthy eaters for life, and it may not be creating an app. There may be a lot of different solutions that you could come up with. But we're solutions oriented with that how. We're definitely optimistic. That's what MIGHT is for, and we're collaborative. Always good to work with others, and that's why we do these as team events. You can do this by yourself, but you need a lot of support. And so we have some generative topics, and then I left you on your table like a longer list of topics. But these are some things that you might want to just decide on now. And so there are a couple ways we can do this. You can say at your table, because you're happy with your table now and you want to be with your group at your table. You can say, this is the one we want to work on today. You're welcome to kind of rewrite. We're going to actually rewrite right before lunch so you can get your how might we just the way you want it. But we start with some kind of general areas, and the ones that I put up there, you know, creating rituals and routines to establish a culture of innovation, maybe in your classroom, maybe in your school. That's a pretty powerful how might we to start working with. You know, how do you jumpstart people to feel like they can be problem solvers? Wow. How might we help students discover their passions so they can be successful at each stage of their lives, just like that project group worked on the 20% time. They had some things come out of that. Or how might we create a learning environment that inspires problem solving and risk taking? That could be one. How might we reimagine professional learning so that we can continue to grow, feel inspired, and have the greatest impact on our students? That could be something that'd be really powerful for the Teaching Fellows Institute if you wanted to take it as a team for the Teaching Fellows Institute and continue on with that one. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes at your table. So the last thing we'll do before break is I just wanted you to take a look at the handout on your table called The 10 Faces of Innovation. There is a book by Tom Kelly that goes over the 10 Faces of Innovation. And as you were working to talk about what you wanted to work on, I thought this would be a good activity for you to like just go around at your table after you kind of read through this and kind of think about what is sort of my superpower that I might bring to this team today. I always like teams to really think about what are the skills and the strengths that we bring to the table. When I work with my innovation teams, I say, you know, if you don't have a caregiver on your team, you're toast. Because at the end, you know, at some point during the year, you're going to come to me and you're going to say, we're just so dejected because we went to the principal and he said, you know, X, Y, and Z, you can't do this or that. And at those times, like, people are just, you know, they want to keep going, but they don't have somebody like saying, hey, this is great, we're optimistic, we're going to make it. So a caregiver is really essential, but all these roles are important. And the other thing, especially if you read the book, you'll see is that we have to take on different roles on a team a lot of times. Maybe I don't really want to be the anthropologist. Maybe I do not want to go out and interview students. But there may be a time when everybody on the team has to go out and do some interviewing students to get some input from those students so that you can kind of move forward knowing what people are thinking. So read through these and then share at the table what you think maybe your top 1 or 2 superpowers are. Just to bring us back together, so we spent some time just talking about teams, forming teams, talking about some roles you might need on the team. I know there was some discussion around like there are other roles that we bring to the team, and that's also great. I just normally use this as a way to say it's important, you're important on the team, and you've got to have people who are willing to take on some of these roles. Because this is a process where we are doing a lot of going out and observing and interviewing and bringing back information. So always need organizing people. You know, teams don't do well. Our innovation teams always, you know, do very badly if they don't have somebody to help organize and, you know, all of that information and keep people on track and keep timelines. So even though we're talking about innovation, we're talking about some serious record keeping a lot of times so that you can actually get your ideas out in the world and try them. I always bring up this idea of minding the gap because we have where we are our current reality. So you've all chosen these topics. You know your current reality around these topics. I mean, students don't always have time to explore their passions. We don't always have all the things in place to create this culture of innovation. Our schedules are our schedules are we go bell to bell, you know, it's all about the bell and all the schedules. So we know that that's our current reality. But innovation happens in this gap between our reality and the purpose and vision and what we're looking to the future to have. So today we're going to be digging in, mapping the problem, and then coming up with some ideas this afternoon and prototyping some things that we can try. So we're getting ready to get into the hairball part of our session. I love this image. There's a book, I read a lot of books called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. Sometimes our systems get really complex and complicated and you feel like you're never going to find a way out to solve a problem. And so Gordon McKenzie says, you know, it's like this entangled pattern. And to be an innovator, you have to kind of stay out of the getting sucked into all the like procedures and policies and all that stuff. You have to know it's there, but you have to be willing to take a risk and stay out of the hairball a little bit. I just kind of love that book because I was in trouble at my job for a little while one year, and I read the book. It made me feel better. It's like, it's okay. You don't always want to get caught up into what's going on that's been going on for 100 years. So there's also a change formula that I just like to share, which is you've got to have people who are dissatisfied, D, times people who have a vision, times F, first steps. And that has to be greater than the resistance, R. So that's the change formula. It's been around a long time and kind of repurposed in a variety of ways. But just keep in mind that if you don't have people who are dissatisfied, then you're going to have some trouble actually trying to solve your problem. And you have to know that vision. And the greater all those things are, then the greater your chances of success, because you will have resistance to what you decide that you'd like to try out. So persistence has got to be greater than that resistance. And that's my road, which is still closed, but that's another story. So we're going to do a little bit of painstorming and mapping out the problem. And there are a number of ways to do this, but what I specifically enjoy is the problem tree analysis, which comes out of the Luma Institute. And I'm going to give each team some paper. And this is a place where you might want to just find another table, or you might want to you know, just kind of, if you've got a lot of stuff on your table, you could find another part of a table to do this. But we're going to have the big pieces of paper. And what you're going to start with is your problem, or that you just chose, or, you know, we need to give kids more opportunities to explore their passions, or we need to solve the schedule problem. And what we're going to do is sort of map out what the roots of the problem are. We're going to look at, like, you know, what are the roots? What are the causes of this problem? And then the top part, your leaves, and you can be artsy, or you can just do boxes. The top part, the consequences of the problem. What are we seeing because of schedules? Y'all will have fun. This is a great one for this. Y'all have fun with that. What are we seeing that's, you know, people aren't innovative or students aren't exploring passions? But then we're going to get to the root of the problem, because that's where you need to start. A lot of times we start in one place, but we want to see what all the root causes are so that we can see how to approach the problem. So that activity got us to uncover some of the issues around the problem. And so there are a lot of ways that we can go forward with that. I asked you when you were out to just make some observations too, just around the school, but we're just going to kind of do a group discussion here for a minute or two. So based on some of the things that you have been thinking about your problem, I mean, what have you observed? So if you would take just a few minutes at your table to jot down some things that you've observed in your schools, or even when you were just walking around here, just grab some Post-it notes and take some time to jot down individually some things you observed. And we're going to see if we have some themes that come out around your topic also. So we've kind of looked at some of the roots, and now we're just going to make some observations, get kind of curious. What things have you observed related to your particular problem? So take a few minutes just to share out your observations, cluster a little bit just to see if you have some things in common on your team. Because we're going to starting to see some insights emerge. We're going to write some headlines of some of the top things that we see. So I know there is a method to the madness, okay? We've been in this defining stage, which is difficult. This is the hard part. What is the problem? What are the root causes? What are the things that are, the consequences as a result? I love that you've then kind of added on your own personal observations from what you've been seeing in your school. I think, wow, we're back. So I know that we did a lot before lunch. I want to review a couple of things, and then we're going to switch over into the afternoon part, which is ideation and just learning to be wild thinkers and coming up with great solutions, and then the prototyping process, how you can go about just getting a really low resolution prototype out there so that you can get feedback. So we'll be giving feedback to each other this afternoon. So we'll talk about that and be very active. The thing that I'm not going to have us do, there's been a lot of this going on already, is conversation around your problems. But in the real world, going back to your school, if you had these two extreme users that you've put down on paper, then you would go find people like that. And you would run some sets of interviews with some of these people that you've identified, and you would ask them some open-ended questions to try to find out what they're thinking and to get them to tell you some things. And I have the tips in your agenda, just some tips for interviewing. I think that's on the last page also. But you have to build rapport with people, obviously, to interview them. It's good to ask them ahead of time. It's not really good to just have your face down and take notes all the time. So sometimes people use an app just to record so they don't have to be wildly taking notes. Mirror body language. If try to just connect with people, because they're going to be more likely to give you good information. So if you're talking to administrators, I mean, that's a great place to start, but you've obviously got to make sure your questions are phrased so that people aren't put on the defensive. But just say, hey, I'm really trying to come up with, a new way to think about how we could do the schedules around here. And I want to talk to you and find out what are all the logistics, who are all the people involved. And so empathy interviews are a good way to get at what people are really thinking and feeling. And sometimes on a team, you'll send several people out to interview different people and then come back and so sort of synthesize what you learned from those interviews. So there is just some interview activity questions here. What was it like the last time you had a chance to follow something you were passionate about? So leave open-ended questions for people. Why would somebody else think that this was better than that? Or, what does it feel like? Show me a moment. Show me something, or show me an artifact that shows me what you care about. So those are just some tips when you go out and interview people, but it's really important to do that because you've observed, you think you know what they're thinking, right? And then you go talk to them and you find out completely different information. So it's very important to calibrate and make sure what you're observing is also what people are really thinking. But that's why we do the extremes activity, because it's important to go out and find those extremes and find out what they're thinking and feeling, and you'll have more insights. So there's a practice activity. You can interview each other about a problem and just practice. So that's something you could do if you wanted to do that with a friend, just to practice an interview technique. You could do that. So we're not going to do the actual interviews today because we don't really have people to interview except each other, which is great. But we're going to move on. I have resources in this slide deck that we won't be using. Just because there are so many great resources to help you kind of hone down what your problem your area is. And one is called the SQUID, which is sequential question and insight diagram. And it just helps you answer all those unanswered questions. And the way it starts is you start with your topic. This is kind of like your problem tree analysis. And everybody in the team writes a new question. And then you try to answer that all those questions. And then from there, you get more questions, and you try to answer those questions. And so sometimes this helps you to really think about what is the next thing you need to focus on. We use this with our innovation teams because they're really digging way down into a problem and need to think about, you know, all the directions they could go and all the questions they have, and it's a good process to use. So you've had a chance to create that problem tree analysis, look at all the root causes, kind of cluster some of your observations into some themes, and then the last the last piece before ideate, which is almost here, is for you to just kind of think about what are some of the top headlines. If you were going to write a little newspaper article about the problem that you've just analyzed, what are the top themes that come out? And you can write it in a headline format, which makes it kind of catchy and helps you to start thinking about how you're going to come up with ideas around those areas. So what I'd like you to do is just choose your customer that you've got there, that you have, and just take a minute just to on your teams to talk about what are your top maybe 3 headlines that have come out of what you learned this morning, and write those down. We do this so that we can converge a little bit more, and we know that these are specific areas to focus on, because you've gotten so many things out on your pieces of paper. You've got a lot of areas that you could work on, so we want to make sure you're working in some of these target areas. So just some of you have already done that to a certain extent, creating those themes, but do write the headlines. This came out of actual brainstorming, where we were trying to analyze why how to personalize learning for students, and we had a group of people, and one headline was "Vision Cuts Red Tape." So that kind of informed how we could come up with ideas around getting people to see the vision. Breaking down walls takes a wrecking ball. That was one we didn't actually go forward with a lot of ideas around breaking down walls, but actually it was around collaboration. How do we get people to collaborate more? Because it turned out that was a theme. People aren't collaborating. So just take a few minutes at your table and come up with your maybe top 3 themes, because we want to make sure we know what to focus on before we start the ideation process. All right, we're going to go ahead and share out some headlines. What I'd like is for each table to just talk about reiterate your problem statement, talk about the user that you explored, those extremes with, and then share out your headlines. So deep insights, those are the things that you're going to hold on to as you move forward, because we can't deal, we did that whole problem analysis. We can't deal with everything, but now we know these are the really important things to focus on as we come up with ideas. This is a real action project. I just wanted to mention, if you do this back in your school, or if you have students do it, it's really important to keep this concept of a project nest, or just having some place where you display all the work that you've done. As I was looking around today, I was like, there's not a whole lot of place on the walls. I didn't want to get sticky on their windows, but just depending on the space you have, sometimes you just need to have, sometimes a bulletin board will work if it's in a common area where all the, if it's a teacher project and everybody comes in. Sometimes if it's student projects, I get that foam board and just let them, attach all their thinking to that, just so they can have it and move it around, especially if you have groups of students using this process, or your team, you need to have sort of your project nest of all that stuff you've done, just so you can go back to it and say, oh, this is where we came from. This is Cindy's nest. I went into their room after they had been we did a 2-day workshop with our innovation incubator teams. They actually prototyped around how can we close the gap so that students are developmentally ready for school, as well as age ready when they come to school as kindergarten students, because typically they're a year behind in development. Even though they're age ready, they're not developmentally ready for the things that we ask them to do. And it was a PE teacher, an occupational therapist, a kindergarten teacher. It was a really nice, diverse team. And they're the ones that went all slick this summer, and they've got like their whole product, their toolbox of resources, and their website with all their YouTube videos. They're ready to like scale that out on a broader scale. They've got an amazing website. But it started with how might we close the gap? They came up with a much better how might we statement after going through this like torturous process of really thinking about all the things related to their problem. But you can see they just made it sort of visible, and they put their prototypes up there just to remind them where they had been. And that's really important when you work with a team, to have everybody around as much as possible, because when one new you can imagine if a new person came in right now and sat down at any of your tables, they'd be like, how did you get where you are? You know, because there's no one right way to approach this, but it's all this problem solving that you're doing. So that's just an example of a project nest. I have these big foam boards, and teams just put everything on the foam boards, and then we can move them around the building. So just think about how you might do that. And so the how might we statement is really an art to write it. I gave you some to start with. And as you go through this process, once you have those insights, you might want to tweak your how might we statement some. You might need to change it. You might want it to be a little, you know, different than the way it was when you started. And that's fine, because a lot of times you uncover a different problem and you may have to actually rewrite the entire problem statement because you've uncovered something different through your exploration. So, I mean, you can calibrate a little bit at your table in a few minutes and say, you know, we're good with what we have now. But I did want to give you just some information that's in the deck about writing how might we's, because you have to include, like, what is the action for people, who is it for, and, you know, why, what are we going to change, so what. So that's just sort of a formula that people use to write these how might we statements. And it's sort of inspiring just to start thinking about everything you do in terms of how might we or how might I, so that you can be really positive about the fact that we can bring about change. And then I've got tips in here. I think the tips are in your handouts, but let's see. Yes, I do have the tips in your handout, so you don't have to writing them down, but just, you know, include who you're designing for, make it inspiring. We always say if people go, ooh, that sounds really great, then you know you've got it. The team I showed you that had that project nest, that very day, they already had their how might we and nobody liked it, and they sat down on the floor and started doing stuff, and then it was like, boom, it just came out of nowhere, and we were all, wow, that's perfect. So it comes after the process has been in place for a while, so don't stress over having it perfect to begin with. So, you know, it is that, does it spark curiosity, and is it accessible and something that people understand? So just write. It's like writing any good question. Does it really spark people to begin thinking about next steps? Okay, so I don't have a slide for this. I'm gonna show you a picture. The purpose of this exercise is to help you to see that your imagination can go beyond just like these 10% improvements of things, that we can actually be disruptive and we can come up with some really crazy wild ideas, and we're going to use Lego for it. So we are in a company and we live in a really cold place and we make snowmobiles. Okay, so this is our business right now. We are all working for the snowmobile company, and I brought you together here today because other companies are winning out with their snowmobile. They have better snowmobiles. So we have to make an improved model of this snowmobile. So I'm going to give you all an opportunity with your set of Legos. By the way, you cannot share with other people. You have to use what is in your bag. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to make a better snowmobile than this current, boring, old-fashioned one that we currently have. So go. You do not have to use all of your Lego. You have to build. Don't just think about it. Don't sketch it out. Just start making something and think about what would be a really cool improvement, because our company is about to go bankrupt because nobody's buying our snowmobile anymore. So that what we were just doing was really just they're kind of different kinds of imagination, but it was very descriptive. How can you improve this product? And you're just kind of going from something you already know. Now, some of you already leaped ahead to the second activity that we could do, and this is something that you can do with students, because I think this is also a really fun activity for students. You don't have to have the same Legos. I mean, and, you know, ideally everybody has the same thing. Everybody gets a voice. Everybody gets to share, which is very much like ideation too. We don't, you know, we just kind of build on each other's ideas. We get ideas from each other. And then the second part is like seeing what is not there. And so the second scenario could be that I would say, you know what, we're ditching the snowmobile, you know, our company, I love your ideas, but we're just going to ditch it. We need some other snow products and let you build another product that could be for the snow. When I did this, I built a party boat, which I thought, I mean, snow party boat. It had a little thing that got ice and turned it into like, you know, snow coney kind of stuff, but you could add whatever you wanted to the ice. So anyway, I made a party boat. And then the third part is really around this whole idea. That's, you know, more creative imagination, and y'all were already there. Like, you were already like moving out of the snowmobile market here. But the last part is just the creative imagination. Like, okay, it is global warming. There's no more snow. We don't do snow products anymore for our company. And the other challenge you can lay down at that point is you can't be fun. It's got to be all about work. And so make some product that's completely different and all about work. So that's how the imagination game goes. It's maybe something you can take back and modify to work with students or other adults. I think it's a really good activity to lay the groundwork for us doing some creative thinking, because ideation is about everybody having a voice, everybody getting ideas out there. No ideas are bad. And we learn from each other and we build on each other's ideas. So as a team, now that we've all heard all these great ideas, we would probably build some awesome new snow product from that. So you can take that as an idea of something you could go back and do with students or with others. So we're actually at this point ready for ideation. I told you at the beginning of the day, the morning is all about that, you know, empathizing, defining what is the real problem, what are the key insights. And so now we're ready for ideation, which is wild and crazy. We're going to diverge and come up with lots of ideas, which is really great. And from there, we're going to pick out which ideas are ideas that have a possibility for going out into the world and becoming prototypes that we can then test out in the world. So this is the second phase of the design thinking process. We had inspiration, now we're in ideation. And then implementation is sort of the very wrap up at the end of the day, the things you can do to get these ideas launched. So we're going to have this yes and mindset. We did yes let's earlier today, so you already know sort of this mindset of there's no buts here, okay? So during ideation, you can't say but. We can't do that because. Now, you know how easy it is for me to say something and you to say, but Donna, really we can't because we don't have time, or we don't, you know, so this is not the place for that. The morning time was kind of the place for that, where you could like brainstorm and talk about, like, these are some things that might go wrong, and we'll have another chance to shoot down each other's ideas, just so you know. There's always a chance once you make a prototype that people give you feedback, and it doesn't, you know, it's good feedback, and I didn't mean like really shoot down ideas, but there is always a chance after you have prototyped some things to realize this isn't going to work. I got feedback from somebody. So we're not just saying this is all good and peaceful and love from now on, but for the ideation session, it's all about yes. And I've got the brainstorming ideas probably on that list with the how might we questions, but these are things we like to keep in mind, and there are different ways you can do the brainstorming, but we're going to use a method called 100 Ideas in 10 Minutes with your team, and I'll tell you how that goes. But defer judgment, that's the main thing. You can't judge other people's ideas. You can build on each other's ideas. If I say, let's build a snowmobile so that kids can have a new sport, y'all can't shoot it down. You can't say, look, there's no snow here, Donna. You would have to say, yes, and let's find a snow machine and make some snow, okay? So that's how it goes. We try to just build on each other's ideas. Stay focused on the topic. Don't go off on some discussion. This is not the time to talk discussion. It's just like, you said this idea, I'm going to add my idea. We each have a voice, just like we did with this Lego game. And you can be visual. We're going to use Post-it notes, so you can be visual if you want to. and we want to go for quantity, because the more ideas we have, the more opportunity we have to take those ideas and think about, or there's some common themes of things that we can cluster together. So those are your brainstorming rules, and this is how it's going to go. We're going to do this 100 ideas. So everybody at your table will need Post-it notes and a Sharpie, and this is where you need to stand up. So we can put some paper on a wall back there, and we can probably put a piece of paper over here on this wall, and maybe over there on the door would work. So yeah, I'll just let Team CSI, y'all can have the door. How's that? And you guys can go to that back wall back there, and Team Time Lords can go over here. We'll get some paper. So here's how it works. So you're going to have 10 minutes. I will set my little timer, and just each person start writing down ideas. But after I write an idea, I'm going to put it on the paper, and I'm going to say what the idea is. So everybody in the group can hear my idea, and somebody might want to build on that, or they might just want to put their idea up there that doesn't have anything to do with mine. So we're going to keep adding ideas, as many ideas as we can get out in 10 minutes, and just build on each other's ideas, or just put random ideas out there. It doesn't matter. Another technique is to try to keep thinking of wild ideas, and sometimes we do something called a mashup. So your team might decide you want to do a mashup just to get different ideas. Like, we could look outside of education. So if we're going to do something around passion, what if we thought about what Google does? And then we get all some kind of cool ideas if we knew what Google did, or or a Disney. You know, I like to use Disney World as a good mashup idea. What if the schedules at school were like Disney World? We would all have our little scanny things, and I don't know, there's a lot of complicated stuff behind how you get fast pass and all that. So you can think about some other industry too, to just kind of help you jumpstart your thinking, because as educators sometimes we always go down the same paths we've already been down before. So this is probably a good way for you to just start thinking outside of the box a little bit. So you can decide as a team if you've got some mashup, or just mash up in your head and throw those things out there. Don't be ashamed. All ideas are good. When you do this with students, it's kind of fun to do a bad idea contest first, to see how many bad ideas they can come up with, because a lot of times the bad ideas turn into good ideas. So don't worry, there's no stress. So give each team a piece of paper, and bring your Post-its and your Sharpie. Any questions about the ideation part? As many ideas as you can get. Yes? Yes. Yes. So your ideas, yes, based on, thank you for letting me recap. Yes. So you know what your problem statement is, and then those insights. I think those insight areas are where you can really cook with some good ideas. So just remember your insights that you came up with, and just a bazillion ideas around how you might start working on this problem. And it can be little things or big things. All right? All right, everybody ready for the next step? So you can stay where you are, but we're going to start clustering these ideas. But I did want to mention, when we look at the ideas you have up there, we look at 3 different things. Desirability, that's the most important thing. Is this something that people would want, right? And then we also look at feasibility. Is it feasible? Does technology make it possible? Sometimes technology fits in there, but is it feasible? Is it something that can actually be done? And viable, that's sometimes around funding, like, can we do it? We don't let this stop us in choosing ideas to move forward, because we want to try all kinds of things out, and then we can figure out maybe the feasibility and viability piece, but it should be desirable, right? So your group should think it's a good idea to move forward and that other people would like it. So I wanted to mention that. And so if you can get something that's desirable, feasible, and viable, that's what you're looking for. So we've done a lot of like storming, right? We stormed all these ideas. Now we're going to converge again. We're going to norm around the things that we think are promising. And the first step of this is that we need to really cluster. So You're all familiar with clustering now, but so 4 steps on converging. And I think we're going to actually go in a different order than that's on here. I think it's make sure you can go ahead and kind of cluster things into kind of like categories, things that might go together. And then I'm going to pass around, I'm going to come around to your group and give you some little stickers, and everybody will get maybe 4 votes, and you'll get to vote for maybe something that you absolutely love, maybe one that is something that it's just kind of you, it's, you know, it resonates with you a lot, and maybe one is something really risky and scary for you. So you'll get to vote. You can throw all your votes on one idea, but this way we'll get to see what people are really thinking in your group and which ideas come to the top. It's like kind of like a heat map looking at where we have all the dots. So first of all, kind of cluster by themes, because sometimes ideas can be packaged up together, right? You might have a lot of, like you had some flexible, you had some like learning environment stuff. There's a couple things that could maybe be packaged into a prototype. So do the clustering, and then I'll bring these around so you can do the voting and give you the information on voting. I'm going to give you another activity that's going to help your team decide maybe which ideas to bring forward. So I've given you more paper, and you'll need just one person to do a very, very quick divide your paper into 4, and we're going to put effort on the bottom and impact on the top. So we're going to map out our ideas that we like. You don't have to move all your ideas over, but the ones that you've already voted on that have some votes that seem promising, we're going to move them over into this chart. And I'm going to just explain this just a little bit. This impact effort chart is around how much effort will I have to put into this to prototype it, and what will be the impact. So if it looks like it's going to be high effort but also high impact, we'd put the post-it note there. Now that doesn't mean you're not going to do that because it's going to be a lot of effort. It just means you're like, yeah, that seems like a lot, right? You're a little bit concerned. If it's going to be high impact and low effort, that seems like a pretty good category to have some ideas in. So if there's some things that you think it's going to be easy to like get that out there and prototype it, and it should have a big impact, put it there. And then low effort, low impact, if you've got voted on some ideas that fit there, go ahead and put them there. And then high effort, low impact. So high effort and low impact would be like probably not, right? I'm going to put a lot of effort into something that we think is going to have no impact. That would probably not be a good category to go with. But you might want to prototype a high effort, high impact, as well as a high impact, low effort idea. So take everything that you voted on that you think has potential, and then move those post-its over onto your paper into the square where you think it fits. And you can, of course, use some proximity, like if it's way down here, you know, or put it up in the corner depending on what you think. And I'll come around and help you out with that. And this is going to help us choose what to prototype. All right, well, let's head back to your table for a few minutes. And you'll be back up there because you're going to have to get up in a minute and go back and see what you put on the board. So, and I see our people taking photographs, excellent, artifacts. So that process just allows you as a team to start talking through some of the logistics around maybe some of these ideas, so that you're not going into this cold saying, oh, we're just going to do that no matter what. Now you've really thought about, wow, it's maybe going to take a lot of effort. And as I say, that doesn't stop you from doing it. You just need to know that ahead of time. But this is probably the little sweet spot over here, those of you who found high impact and low effort. So that might be something you want to start with. So we are, from this stage, launching into the prototyping piece. So this has been ideation, which is coming up with all these ideas, brainstorming, and technically prototyping is also part of the ideation because we haven't really sent it out into the world to be implemented fully. So we're still kind of looking at these ideas and evaluating them. And so we're not actually in implementation quite yet, but we will be. So we're going to do the next phase, which is, and really close out the day with building some prototypes around these ideas that you've come up with. So you all have your problem statement, you've got those great insight areas that have yielded these wonderful ideas, and now you've kind of narrowed it down again. We've converged again, finally. So we have some things that we think are promising. And then what we're going to do next is the storyboarding piece, and then we're going to actually build out some prototypes. And I'm not going to give you a lot of time because it's like with the Legos, like constraints is all good. It's all good to just try to put something together really quick so that you can get feedback on it. Because what we typically do with some of our strategic planning, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but in my experience in education is we just launch out and say, you know what, we're going to do this whole thing, right? Does anybody ever, have that person come in and say, this is a whole new program we're going to implement. Everybody's going to do everything. All right, so this is the stress we all feel, right? And with this process, what we're doing is we're kind of launching some things out there to see how it works and if it's going to be a good thing or not before we just build out and put all this effort into something that's not going to yield results. Because sometimes we launch programs and then they're not successful because we didn't lay the groundwork of getting things out, getting feedback from people. So it's a completely different process. And here again, I keep showcasing this team because they're like, we're wearing dunce hats and we're making stuff, and it seems kind of like a weird thing that adults are making things, but it yields great feedback from other people, because until you can really visualize your idea and show it to someone for feedback, you may not get really good feedback. If you just tell somebody some words, they'll be like, go try that. But if you show them, they'll start asking questions about the model you create. So this is a process that you can also use with your students, get students engaged in really seeing what would this look like, and they can build things. So we've already talked a bit about you have to choose the first customer and what's a minimum viable product that you can get out there for that first customer. So if it's a student, what's like the most basic of this idea that we could kind of put out into the world, and you try it and you see what happens when you're in the testing phase. And then if it works, you would maybe try a second product with the same customer, and then maybe with a second customer segment like parents, you'd try the first product. So there are different ways to go about it, but it's really about taking down all the bowling pins. What you start with should really start the ball rolling to take down other things that you need to conquer to be successful. So, and we're going to skip through actor mapping, but actor mapping is sometimes a good way to realize, like, how would this idea impact parents or students or teachers. So that's just another activity that if you had a lot of time, you could go into that too. So we're going to do the storyboard. You should have a storyboard templates at your table, just like with the Lego bricks activity that we did, as well as with the ideation. Everyone has to create a story. The reason that we have everyone create a story is so that I can't put words in your mouth. Okay, if we tried to create a shared story right now around one of these ideas or clusters of ideas, probably you'd have a little discussion in your group. Everyone would start kind of talking for a long time, and somebody would be unhappy. Somebody would leave, like, say, you didn't listen to me. So this is our chance for everybody to create their own story, and we use a storyboard template. And what you're going to do is go back to you may have to go back to your impact effort chart, and you alone get to pick what you think would make a really lovely story. So I saw over here, well, let's see, who's got something you can tell me that you put up there on the, tell me one thing and we'll talk about how you do a story with it. In one group, tell me one, yeah, we have to go back to the board. Okay, so create a safe environment, build confidence. Y'all had that too. You had the safe environment too. Different problems, still need a safe environment. So I might just make up a story like, I come into school, I'm a student, and I go into my teacher's classroom, and all of a sudden there's all this signage on the walls that's welcoming to me, or maybe there's some inspiring quotes, or maybe there's a place I can go if I need to have private, space to read. So, you know, I would just make up a little story. So you're just going to like make up a story that works for you around what you think is your favorite idea or cluster of ideas. And you're just going to sketch it out. If you're not a sketcher, don't worry. Draw a stick figure and write, write a little text. But tell a story around seeing this idea in action. And the reason we do the storyboard first is that everybody gets to write a story and then share it with other people in the group. And we're going to take maybe 10 minutes for you to do this and then share out. And then we're going to let you as a group decide, you know, we have 2 or 3 awesome stories here. We're going to prototype both of them, or we want to just do one prototype as a group. So we'll be able to look at the stories and decide what we want to try out first. And we're going to actually create prototypes and get feedback from each other. So any clarification? Am I sufficiently unclear? It's your story. You do not have to use all the boxes. You could use 4 boxes. You could use 2 pages, but just make it like a storyline that works for you. Like the principal admin comes in and you say, hey, I got to talk to you about the schedule. We have this awesome idea. We're going to eliminate testing. But that would be a story. Okay, so just go ahead and work on a story. And I'll come around. I'm going to put 10 minutes on the timer, but I'll come around and kind of see how you're doing with that. Okay, so you might need to finish up a few little pieces, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you about the next part. And then you can also kind of take a little break in there if you need to go to the restroom or anything. We will create 1 or 2 prototypes per team based on your stories that you've created. And then we're going to come back and you're going to have a little chance to present. Your team will have a chance to present to the other teams. So you won't have a lot of time to present. You probably have about 3 minutes to tell us about your prototype and get some feedback. And then we'll kind of close out the day. So what we're going to do next is what is called Goldilocks prototyping. If you all remember Goldilocks, it was just right. Not too much, not too little. So I want you in your groups to share your stories with each other, and you as a group can decide whether you're going to rumble and have 2 prototypes at your table go up against each other, or whether you're just going to put all your resources into creating one prototype from one of the stories that you've picked. And you can have like some team roles, like you can, you know, make sure somebody is kind of helping to put some things together, you know, whatever team roles you want to have. But we always want to kind of put this prototype together pretty quickly. We do have arts and crafts, and it seems like arts and crafts is really low resolution prototyping materials. If you go to the Stanford D School, what I have linked in your resources list is a list of their resources. So they have the same kind of stuff. I just have some stuff over on the counter, so your team can use anything you can find to create a prototype, just to make your thinking visible. So the first step is to share your stories with each other, and then pick a story that you want to prototype. Or as I say, if there are 2 stories that are just amazing, you can prototype both stories. But you're going to each share your story, pick one thing, one story, and then you can pick a moment from that story to prototype if you want. So, you know, we've come up with a whole new schedule for the school. Maybe you prototype a schedule. You know, whatever you want to prototype, but just that I can help you think of some things, but I think you'll be fine with working together to create something. And I'm going to give you a time limit because constraints are perfect. So we're going to try to be finished up by, what do y'all think? At least 3:30. It might be 3:25. I'll see how it's going, okay? So 20 minutes, share your stories. Do any breaks you need to do, and then make something, because we're going to get feedback from other people to see whether this idea would actually fly out in the real world, okay? We are going to make stuff. Okay, how's everybody? Are we ready? I think we have it good enough. This is like Project Runway. You know, when it's called, like you're trailing in with something like half hanging off, but it's time. So we are going to do very short team presentations, so don't stress over this. I know you all have a plan. So which team would like to come up first? Those are all amazing, and see what you can do in a short amount of time. So push your students, and this is definitely something you can bring into your classroom. Use some of those D-School materials, go to the dollar store. Once kids are problem solving, let them create and get feedback from other students. It's very powerful. Because when you can see it and you can build it, you can make it happen. So it's building to think, just like we did with the Legos. We're building, we're thinking, and we're making it happen. So we already did the feed forward a little bit, just getting some feedback, but it's always good to just share your feedback out with a variety of people and see what they say. And then you haven't spent a lot of money, a lot of time to get feedback, because and you've seen what might be tangible, and you can go out and try that. And that's the whole testing piece, which is the very end of the design thinking cycle. And I included some resources, including like this prototype testing plan, how you can take it out into the world, just some questions for you to answer. So that's in that slide deck that's linked. Just some other graphics that I'm not going to deal with right now, but I always like to think about, like, what are our rock values for our organization, and what are these kind of whirlpool values that are a little bit scary. So when you're testing these things out, you have to always be aware of your environment and navigating the waters of sometimes different admin, school boards. So you always have to just think about what's the best way, what's the best approach as you launch these new ideas. What are big conflicts that might arise? And then, so we're really at this next steps piece, because I would love to just come to all your schools and just hang out with you as you implement these things. But as you go back, working with a team at your school, or even implementing this with students, you really do, in this testing phase, need to be able to get your idea articulated. You need to have what is the potential for impact. You need to know what you're trying to do, and what we call a value proposition. Being able to tell others why it's important is really important. Is really important to be able to do that storytelling piece. So thinking about how you can make it a story that you can sell to other people is really important. And how would you get the idea off the ground? What's the first thing to do? I included this business model canvas, and there's a link to that on the agenda also, so that you can go in and just get this document. And it's good as you start to build out your project. Once you've worked with a team, you've thought about some ideas, you've gotten feedback, you're going to try something, you really need to start thinking about the value prop, obviously. What are some key activities we're going to do to make this happen? I mean, this is really that organization piece that we do for everything. Who are our partners who can help us? Who are you going to help? Is this for the students, teachers, parents, that customer segment? And what kind of customer relationships do you have to build? How are you going to, not how much will you make, but probably, where will you get the funding for this? What will it cost, and how will you reach people? How will you get this message out to other people? Because you can have a great idea and you can try it out and you can love it, and maybe you and a team can love it, but if people don't know about it, you may not be able to get a lot of traction around it in your school. So marketing it is really important. And Business Model Canvas is just one of those tools to help you to think about the things that you need to do to get this idea off the ground. So that you can do back in your school once you start working with an innovation team. If you go back to your school and pull together some teachers, and you decide that you want to use the design thinking process, I mean, I've shared all my resources. You can kind of bake it down into whatever version works for you, but this has given you hopefully some activities for you to use either with teams at your school. Individually, I redesigned some of my work using this method, or you could use this method with your students. And I hope I've shared enough little activities and things that you could bring into your classroom today that you can benefit from that.